As I said last March, like two pit bulls growling through a fence, Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov had been staring each other down for a long-ass time. And they had. The fight had already fallen through twice. Third attempt almost fell apart in the negotiations. By the time 209 Fight Week arrived, the anticipation for that matchup was at an all-time high. I ended this video with the line, "Let's fucking go already." Little did I know, that's exactly what Khabib would be shouting a couple days later on his way to getting a tiramisu pumped out of his stomach. The epic clash of outstanding win streaks and the fight to restore order to a division left in limbo wasn't to be. And for the third time, their two paths diverged in an anticlimax. For Tony, it was right back in the hunt. He spent months trying to provoke the most logical available opponent, Nate Diaz, into a guaranteed barn burner. Before this little on-air spat with Kevin Lee snowballed into an interim title fight for the up-and-comer. A lot of people shit on Tony's trash talk, but it's a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. He makes every word that comes out of his mouth sound like a matter of life and death. When you click on an interview with El Kukui, you've essentially booked a one-way ticket to Crazy Town on the Tony train. And after a couple months wacky trash talk, the two men stepped into the octagon, ostensibly for an interim belt, but more importantly on the line was the possible life-changing red panty implications, the chance of welcoming McGregor back to mixed martial arts.
If he want to call himself a champ, if he want to walk around and feel good about himself, then he know who to come to.
You know, I haunt his dreams. I'm sure he's thinking of me too. Same thing when I saw him at the Mayweather thing. He's gonna see me in the future. I told everybody that I'm gonna pick off everybody. In all sense and reality, it's happening.
Beyond that, the fact that they both wrestled for Grand Valley really appear to drag their egos into the whole affair. Bragging rights, pride, territoriality, and the animosity produced an outstanding first round. Both men were down within 5 seconds of each other. Midway through, Lee secured the takedown, but Tony is such a nightmare from the bottom. Rubber guards, submission attempts, constant aggression. At times, Lee was like a fly caught in a spider's web, until he eventually secured the mount and proceeded in trying to pound the consciousness out of Tony's skull. Oh, he was on Ferguson like a fucking staph infection. Wicked ground and pound to end the round. Emotions boiled over and Lee threw a pretty blatant strike after the bell. As Herb pulled him off, Tony beckoned him back into his guard. Oh, fuck the bell. These guys were there for war. Quality first round and one in the books for the Motown phenom, who was more than rising to the occasion. Second round, different story. Tony took the center of the octagon, pouring on the pressure. Switching stances, throwing strikes from bizarre angles, repeatedly landing a jab. This time when Lee shot, Tony sprawled like a fucking cat, and moments later, introduced Lee to an elbow from hell. After another failed takedown attempt at the end of the round, Lee was visibly fading. Not a bad round for him though, landed some solid shots of his own, but Tony had evened the score. There was still a little gas left in Lee's tank at the start of round 3, enough to score 2 takedowns, but very little beyond that. After a gutsy armbar escape, he tried to rest in Tony's guard, and was promptly wrapped up in a triangle and tapped on the brink of passing out. Solid showing for the Motown phenom, especially considering the huge step up in competition. But the man who emerged with the interim ticket to the big show was Tony Ferguson. El Kukui has put together a legendary win streak, and it finally culminated in a title. Anything outside a title unification will be pretty ridiculous from a rankings perspective. In the most straightforward and rational sounding manner, Dana acknowledged that fact at the post-fight presser.
Nobody's talked about Diaz. Diaz has never been talked about. That's internet bullshit. Tony's the interim champion. Conor's the champion. It's the fight that makes sense. It's the fight that has to happen. It doesn't make sense. It's the fight that has to happen. Tony accepted the fight, and now we have an interim champion. There's no question now who gets the shot at Conor. It's pretty definitive, you know, because you can have all these questions about, oh, this Khabib should get it. Oh, this guy should get it. Kevin Lee should get it. There ain't no questions now. Tony Ferguson won in a great fight, fair and square. It's pretty simple.
Last week in Glasgow, Conor also acknowledged the need to legitimize the belt. I've already gone from the highest to the high in terms of a money fight. Now the question I always get is about defending the belt and legitimizing the sport and the rankings. Maybe now it would be a good time for me to go and do that and shut that side up. But as encouraging as all that sounds, we already know Dana's favorite negotiating tactic is fucking people around. And he'll do that for hundreds of thousands of dollars. According to Richard Perez, Diaz's price tag is in the tens of millions of dollars. Dana will fuck a lot of people around for that kind of money. And although Conor's surprising acknowledgement of the need to legitimize his belt does suggest a unification bout, in that very soundbite, he appeared to give precedence to the Diaz fight. Nathan is there, he's trying to come in here and make all these demands. If he starts pricing himself out of an event, I probably will defend against the person who wins this interim belt, or someone along that line to legitimize it again. So this sounds like a pure negotiation, with Tony's interim belt being used as the stick to beat Nate's fee down a couple $1 million. But despite the financial upside, Nate is a risky fight. I mean, outside a couple bumps in the road, McGregor has pretty much run through every opponent, except Diaz. Nate tapped the fuck out of his ass on 10 days' notice, and Conor's revenge was a split decision, and he had to go through hell to get it. A lot of people feel Diaz is 2-0. So, Tony might turn out to be a nightmare. Khabib might turn out to be a nightmare. But Nate Diaz is the one fighter we know is a proven nightmare fight for McGregor, one he has a serious chance of losing, which would ultimately mean losing a trilogy to the number 10 ranked lightweight. On top of that, it's also a fight that's not going anywhere. Its marketability is in the rivalry. It never revolved around the belt. So there's really no urgency in booking the fight now. This fight can wait. So there's ups and downs to both. Diaz is the money fight, but he's a nightmare matchup. If Conor loses, he's lost the belt and rivalry to the number 10 ranked lightweight. There's a serious chance of that happening, and there's no real need to take that risk right now, because that payday will wait. On the other hand, Tony has earned his shot like no motherfucker has ever earned a shot. I mean, if he epitomizes anything, it's doing shit the hard way. And we don't know how he matches up with McGregor. But from a business point of view, he's probably the worst available option for the most business-savvy fighter the sport has ever seen. Pros and cons to both, but McGregor is a man whose entire career has been defined by a series of escalating goals. From his UFC debut to featherweight champion. He then went on to the biggest fight in UFC history. Following that, he became the first two-divisional champion ever. Then on to a fight with Floyd Mayweather for $100 million. And from that $100 million payday to Tony Ferguson? It's just not McGregor. In fact, it's tough to see any goal that could surpass a rival this. But there is one. Heading into the Floyd fight, commentators mentioned that it was like Michael Phelps versus LeBron James. A ridiculous notion. But that type of weird fantasy matchup is just the type of thing Conor goes for. I think his next targets will be guys like Michael Phelps and LeBron James, and he'll take them on in the one venue those matchups do occur, the Forbes list for the highest paid athletes. In June 2016, Conor McGregor debuted on the list. That year, it was topped by Ronaldo, who earned $88 million. A month or so later, Ronaldo visited McGregor's gym, and Conor jokingly set his sights on overtaking the soccer superstar.
You're number one on the Forbes list. That was like number 35 or something. Good of you there. I'll get up.
You're 30, right?
Race jets.
They're ranking.
Something like that. Yeah, 30 for 38. I think.
I'll be first this time.
Yeah. Maybe next year I'll get you. Congratulations.
Thank you, man.
But I'm about to take over the UFC, so that was sold for $4 billion.
You are there.
You were number one on the Forbes list, maybe next year I'll get ya. Well, wasn't a B. McGregor did shoot up 61 places though, from 85 to 24. The list was once again topped by Ronaldo, earning a staggering $93 million. Now, heading into the Floyd fight, Conor initially predicted a December turnaround against Khabib in Russia, but he eventually revealed the motivation behind that date. What was really making me want to do that December 30 fight was the Forbes list. I thought it was like January to January, you know what I mean? Or like the end of the year to the start of the year. But it's actually June to June. So as soon as he appeared in Forbes, he had his sights set in the top of the list. Just a couple of months ago, he not only reiterated that goal, but he mentioned it as a pivotal factor in his decision-making. Now, he's not going to overtake Floyd, and he's likely guaranteed the number 2 spot. But in order to make the maximum impact, I think he's going to be looking to squeeze in those big money fights before next June. Look, I'd love to see Tony get the fight he deserves, but I don't think McGregor even sees himself competing with mixed martial artists anymore. I guess the rivalries in his mind are with other sporting megastars. So I think we're looking at the completion of the big money trilogy. And then, who knows? Hey, let's meet in the middle for $1 trillion fucking dollars. Which will leave Tony Ferguson without a dance partner. But shortly after his victory over Lee, that familiar old foe started growling again. Great performance, Tony Ferguson. My congratulations. You deserve this belt. #December. The idea of a fighter defending an interim belt while the champion defends his belt is absurd. But if money, vaulting ambition, and power plays prevail, then this is the fight to make. Heading into UFC 209, Tony Ferguson said the following: "You can love somebody without liking them. I love Khabib, man. He's my brother in arms. We're all here, we're all for one. I got peace with him. But inside there, we got beef. We gotta squash this shit. I'm tired of him, man. He's a bully, and I'm gonna shut him up. But I got respect for him, his father, and his whole camp." I love that quote. Brothers in arms, full of respect. But I'm tired of your ass. We got beef to squash. And I think pretty soon, Tony is going to be doubling down on that sentiment. Well, quadrupling down on it when this fight gets signed for the 4th and hopefully the final fucking time.